Hey everyone, and welcome. So, have you ever wished you could talk about your hobbies in French? Or maybe tackle a simple, real-world task like signing someone up for a class? Well, today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We'll start with the fun stuff, hobbies, and then we'll see how to actually use that French in a practical situation. Ready? Let's dive in.
Okay, so first up, let's look at a really useful phrase that kind of sets the theme for today. It's passer le temps. Now, literally, that just means to pass the time. But it's more than that, really. It's all about how you occupy your time, what you do for fun. It's the perfect little phrase to get us thinking about hobbies.
So, that's the big idea, passer le temps. But how do we actually talk about the specific things we do? That brings us right into our first section, parler de ses loisirs, which is all about talking about your hobbies. It's time to learn some new words.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. Ready? Quels loisirs avez-vous? What do you love to do? What are your hobbies? Just think about that for a second, because we're about to go through some really common ones in French.
All right, first one. Let's say you love cycling. In French, you'd say, je fais de la bicyclette. It's a great phrase, and it just means, I ride a bicycle. Let's say it one more time, nice and slow. Je fais de la bicyclette.
What if you're more of a runner? Well, there's a phrase for that too. It's je fais de la course à pied. That means I go running. Simple as that.
Okay, for all the gamers out there, for this one, we use the verb jouer, which means to play. So the whole sentence is je joue à des jeux vidéo. I play video games. Makes sense, right? I love this next one because it's so simple. Je nage. That's it. It just means I swim. Short, sweet, and super easy to remember. Say it with me. Je nage.
Anyone here love to cook? If you do, your phrase is also beautifully simple. Je cuisine. I cook.
And of course, for all the bookworms watching, it's just two little words, je lis. I read. Perfect.
And one last one for now. A really cozy, creative hobby. You'd say je tricote, which means I knit. So, let's recap real quick. We've got cycling, running, gaming, swimming, cooking, reading, and knitting. That is a really solid start to our vocabulary.
Okay, so we've learned all these great new words, but what's the point if we can't use them in real life, right? So let's imagine a situation. Say you need to sign your child up for an activity they love. This brings us to our next part, inscrire son enfant, or enrolling your child.
So, let's meet Hélène. She has a 4-year-old daughter who absolutely loves to swim. Or, as we now know how to say, elle nage. Hélène wants to get her into a swimming class, and we're going to follow along with her every step of the way. We're going to look at a real ad, a real form. This is where it all gets really practical.
Okay, first things first. Hélène finds an advertisement for a class. Her first job is to understand it, right? So that's our next step. Analyser une annonce, analyzing an ad, and pulling out all the important details.
So what's the number one question you ask when you see an ad for something you want to do? It's probably this. Quand peut-on s'inscrire? When can we register? Let's hunt for the answer in the ad.
Ha! And here it is, right in the ad. It says, inscription à compter du 17 mars. Now that little phrase, à compter du, is super useful. It means starting from or from this date onwards. So boom, Hélène knows registration starts on March 17th.
All right, step 1 is done. We know when to register, so what's the next obvious question? À quelle date est-ce que les cours commencent? When do the classes actually begin?
And looking at the ad, we see the answer. The classes start during la semaine du 24 avril. That's the week of April 24th. It's a small thing, but notice how they say the week of the 24th. That's a very common way to phrase dates in French.
Okay, we know when to sign up. We know when it starts. But what about the price? That's always important, right? So the next question is, combien coûte le cours de natation? How much does the swimming class cost?
Now, if we look closely at the ad, we'd probably see a couple of different prices. One for adults and one for children, or enfant. Helen's signing up her daughter, so she's looking for the enfant price. And there it is, $75.
Perfect. Eileen has all the basic info from the ad. What's next? Time to actually fill out the paperwork. That's our next section, remplir les formulaires, or filling the form.
Okay, so when Elaine looks at this form, she's got a few choices to make. It's usually pretty straightforward. First, the schedule.
Does she want temps partiel, that's part-time, or temps complet, full-time? Then she'll need to choose the day of the week, lundi, mardi, Monday, Tuesday, and so on. And last but not least, she'll pick the actual time slot.
All right, we're almost there. The very last step for Helene is payment. And here's an interesting little cultural tip. While we have lots of ways to pay for things, writing a check is still surprisingly common in France for stuff like this. So let's take a quick look at how to écrire un chèque, or write a check. Okay, let's break down this example on the slide. You can see the pay to the order of line is made out to the Centre Communautaire du Boisé. That's the community center. Then, look at how the amount is written out in words. 138 et 46 cents dollars. That's $138.46. And here's a really important detail. Look at the numeric amount. It's 138,46. They use a comma where we would use a decimal point. That's a super common practice in France and a lot of Europe, so it's a great thing to know.
And just like that, we've made it to the end. So think about it. We didn't just learn a bunch of new words for hobbies. We actually walked through a real-life scenario and saw how to use them to get something done. So I have one last question for you. Et vous, quel cours aimeriez-vous suivre? What class would you love to take? Maybe a cooking class, un cours de cuisine? Or are you inspired to go swimming? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.